Welcome to the AAAi podcast. I'm Bridget McCormick, the CEO and president of the American Arbitration Association.
And I'm Zach Abramowitz, founder of Killer Whale Strategies and investor in disruptive legal startups. The AAAi podcast tells the story of the American Arbitration Association's AI journey. We discuss emerging trends in artificial intelligence with movers and shakers inside AAA, as well as with key influencers in the broader legal AI ecosystem. So I introduced myself earlier today. I didn't mention at the time that in addition to being the founder and CEO of Killer Whale Strategies, I am also the co-host of the AAAi podcast, podcast produced by the AAA to, number one, explore the constantly evolving legal landscape and the impact of AI and disruptive technology on the legal profession and on dispute resolution. And my co-host is here with me on the stage as well. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, why not? It's great to be here. I'm Bridget McCormick. I'm the president and CEO of the AAA ICDR, and we have a great team here from the AAA ICDR, yay team. And it's exciting to be here today.
Just before you were the CEO and president of the AAA, what was your background? Where did you come from?
I did other things. Right before I was the Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court. Before I was on the court, where I spent 10 years on the court, I was on the faculty at the University of Michigan Law School. And before that, Yale Law School. And I started my career in New York City practicing after graduating from NYU Law School like you.
Go Violets.
I always forget what the thing is, but Violets, yes. Go Violets.
Neither of us were ever at a NYU sports event ever.
No, not yet. Not yet. Never say never.
We are in front of a live studio audience. By the way, just a show of hands in the audience, how many of you have smartphones? And if you do, take them out. Is there anyone who's, okay, no? All right. So if you've got one, we've got a very special QR code you can scan right there to subscribe to the AAAi podcast. This is episode 5. We've already recorded several episodes that both, again, sort of a dual role, talk about what's happening with AI and legal from people in the trenches, but also explores the journey that the AAA is on. We also have this other person on stage with us.
What is he doing here?
What are you doing here, Colin? You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background?
Sure. I am the unannounced guest, not on the slide. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, so my name is Colin Rule. I'm CEO of ODR.com and Mediate.com. So before I was at ODR.com and Mediate.com, I worked at Tyler Technologies, which was a big court technology company.
How did you get to Tyler?
Well, I got to Tyler because I had another ODR startup that spun out of eBay and PayPal, where I was the first director of online dispute resolution. So I'm a nerd. I was just saying earlier, I'm probably one of the few non-lawyers here in the audience. But
we don't say non-lawyer anymore.
We don't say non-lawyer anymore?
No, just lawyers and allied legal professionals.
Well, I like to call myself an NLM, a non-lawyer mediator.
Okay.
So yes, I've been in mediation my whole career.
And Bridget, let's not bury the lead. We have some news.
I'm delighted that as of today, Colin is my partner. The AAA acquired ODR.com and Mediate.com and announced it this morning. And this is a pretty exciting merger for us because as we have been pretty aggressively continuously improving our core business, we're also working on making sure we're stepping into adjacent and new businesses. And ODR.com is going to be a great fighter brand for us to take some big steps. So exciting day.
Congratulations, first of all, and great to be sort of breaking the news here on the podcast.
Yeah.
That's why I say a big part of the podcast is really peeling back the curtain and showing you what an organization looks like as it is, transforming. I want to go for a moment before we talk about the acquisition. You started at the AAA, I think a little bit, almost a year and a half ago. Maybe a tad more, but
tad less,
but
15 months and a week, but who's counting?
15 months in a week, but who's counting?
Yeah.
So this is not like the first sort of big move that you've made. You know, there's the classic CEO big move when you come in, but this really comes on the heels of a lot of over the last year and a half. Tell us a little bit about what the AAA has been up to, and then, you know, in addition to starting the AAAi podcast, a lot of other things kind of going on internally, and I think it'll give people a better appreciation for this sort of next step.
Yeah, so the AAA was doing a lot of great things before I arrived. So that's the most important thing. The team that you see in front of me are tremendous people, and they were doing tremendous work and have been for a long time. AAA's been around since 1926. We're almost 100 years old. The largest provider in the world of ADR services. Last year, we administered over 500,000 cases. And that's a lot. And we're doing that all over the globe. And we have tremendous staff, we have tremendous panelists, and we're constantly thinking about ways we can improve our core products and services. But it seemed pretty clear to me, I accepted this job in September of 22 and didn't start until February of 23, and we know what happened in between.
Did anything happen in between then?
There was a thing that happened in between. Sam Altman rocked our world. And I, showed up and said, hey, we're going to have to figure this out, guys. We have a big new set of changes coming for the business of law, the practice of law, legal education, and therefore for those of us who serve lawyers and their clients, we got some work to do. So one of the first things we did was call Zach Abramowitz to have him present to the team, because there might have been some skeptics. They didn't tell me if they were, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't only me saying there's some stuff happening that we're going to have to work on. And that started along.
When there's something strange in the neighborhood, who are you going to call? Zach Abramowitz.
That's right. And that
just
started
put the big Z in the sky, right? And then he just comes, right?
And that started our pretty aggressively embracing investigation, experimentation, and then building new products and services and ops improvements with generative AI. And we've talked about it before in the podcast, but there's a whole lot to talk about there.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's not like you mentioned you were hired in September, but didn't take over until February. It wasn't like AI, the ChatGPT launched. Oh, what are we going to do now? Let's hire Bridget. You were hired beforehand, and then saw, oh my gosh, this is going to change everything. When did you start actually using ChatGPT?
The very first day. As soon as you told me about it on Twitter, that day. Yeah. Just out of curiosity. And then it's hard to stop, right? Once you figure out all the things it can do for you. I was still in my last job and telling my team at the Michigan Supreme Court, state Supreme Courts have the administrative oversight responsibility for all the courts of the state. So in Michigan, we adjudicated between 3 and 4 million cases a year. And most of those cases are people navigating disputes without lawyers. They can't afford lawyers. So it seemed to me like this could be a breakthrough solution for lots of the problems plaguing courts. So I was trying to stand up teams in the administrative office of the courts to figure out what we were going to do with this technology to be able to better serve our customers. But I only had about a few weeks, and then I was out the door. So luckily, I arrived at this place that already embraced innovation. And it's a little more nimble than state government, right? You can actually decide that you want to head in a direction and then head there. You don't have to convince the legislature to fund it, and the people who want to criticize you to not criticize, all that stuff.
Right.
You don't have that problem.
And I was mentioning earlier today that there is this Deutsche Bank report that's come out showing that the companies that are really succeeding at the moment with AI investment are companies that do have a healthy cash balance, and as everyone knows, the AAA is, since it is a nonprofit, it's constantly reinvesting any profit it earns back into the company every year, which is, helps there. But then the other point that got made in the Deutsche Bank report, which is fascinating to me, is companies that are a little too big, so you talked about the courts, have too much red tape. And I think one of the interesting things, because you're a judge, but you're like the least judgy judge, which is to say you hate red tape.
I can't stand red tape.
And I feel like one of the things that organizations could learn from the AAA, if you want to immediately begin getting into this, is remove red tape and just go.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I used to say at the court sometimes the way to get something done is to just do it, and I get a lot of things done by just doing them. I think I said that in our meeting
Including
yesterday.
acquisitions.
Yeah, on Sunday night, Colin and I were like, let's get on the phone and get the lawyers out of the business. Like we have to, like I think our lawyers were really annoyed by the end. They were like, well, there's this question about this intersection of this legal principle with this one. I'm like, give me 5 minutes and I'll tell you what the answer is. Like, I got the answer, move on, next thing.
So
red tape is a problem.
It's nice to persuade lawyers that they should maybe spend less time working on something when the person sitting next to you is the former Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court and says, maybe we don't need to argue about indemnification anymore.
And it's funny because at the beginning of my legal career, I worked in M&A, and at one point, a senior associate explained to me, he said, here's how every M&A deal works. We spend a lot of time redlining and going back and forth on things that don't actually matter until the clients get really frustrated, come in and say, just sign the deal, right? So you've just signed the deal. When I look at this deal, and I have a little bit of an inside angle here, and I've been thinking about this deal for a while, and the image that comes into my mind is placing a puzzle piece into a spot on the puzzle that is already surrounded on all four sides, which is to say that this acquisition fills a number of needs for the AAA. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I want to get Colin's perspective.
Yeah, I can, but we should let Colin talk about it as well. I mean, we know a lot about the ADR market domestically and globally and where it's headed. And ADR is growing, but services in addition to arbitration are growing at a faster rate than arbitration. Arbitration is always going to be the best response for some disputes. And many high-level disputes, bet the company disputes, people are going to want to have a lot of the process and rules that arbitration provides. But there are lots of different kinds of disputes out there, and not every dispute resolution process is created equal. And there are other processes that are better for different disputes. Mediation is one of them. The AAA has offered mediation for a very long time. People don't know that. We want them to, and they will soon, I think. But a lot of people are interested in online dispute resolution, which is a big term and can mean lots of different things. And we want to deliver all those different things. ODR.com and Mediate.com are already pretty well known, obviously, in the industry globally for many of those services. And also as thought leaders, honestly. And the combination, I think, of the two of our businesses together will be tremendous, both for our current users and for the new users in new markets that we expect to be able to reach. So it's sort of a Clayton Christensen move. Like we're going to be continuously improving what we do now while also building our adjacent and new businesses.
I don't hear many judges talking about the innovator's dilemma, but I think
it's the whole ballgame right now in legal. I mean, honestly, reread it if you hadn't read it in a long time. Reread it. Yeah.
So, Colin, I want to talk to you about the merger, but Bridget mentioned before, AAA has been around for nearly 100 years. When I went back and did a little bit of research, first of all, with like a minor exception, have not done any acquisitions in that nearly 100-year history, except that the AAA itself was founded as a result of a merger. So this seems like kind of like an auspicious moment. This is maybe the new AAA also in a way founded as a result of a merger. Can you tell us, because this is you've been in the startup world for a while. Like you said, you sold to Tyler Technologies.
Sure.
And doing now another acquisition. Why did it make sense for you to join forces now with the AAA and with Bridget for this next phase of dispute resolution?
Well, let's start with Bridget. You just said she's a judge who just quoted Clayton Christensen. I mean, come on. I found in Bridget a new vision for the direction of AAA that was incredibly exciting. And I've worked with AAA for 20 plus years. I mean, AAA is the gold standard. They're the largest dispute resolution organization in the United States and the world writ large. So I actually knew Bill Slate when he was in charge of AAA. I knew India when she took over. We've had opportunities to work together on different projects. But when Bridget comes in, it starts to talk this expansive vision of what dispute resolution can be, and looking also, her experience as a Chief Justice and seeing firsthand the crisis in access to justice we have in the country with, large numbers of pro se litigants and courts that just can't afford to handle the caseloads that they're being tasked with. Bridget has a vision for where AAA is going. And when we were on an AAAi panel last summer, and I heard Bridget present on some of that vision, and I was like, wow, this is exciting. This is new. This is a big change at AAA. I will say, I appreciate what Bridget said. Mediate.com, we're not 100 years old, but I think we're 26, 27 years old. It was founded in 1996, really at the beginning of the internet. And it's become sort of the home of the mediation field online. So we have the largest community of mediators in the world as part of our community of Mediate. And as you say, ODR, I'm not sure, if people here know, it's very auspicious. We're here in Massachusetts because this is where online dispute resolution first arose. Now, the father of online dispute resolution, Ethan Katch, was a professor at UMass Amherst. And obviously, ODR is ADR. It's just ADR plus technology. And, ADR came out of the program on negotiation largely at Harvard. So getting to yes, Fisher and Urey. I mean, this is where a lot of it happened, was right here in Boston. So I actually, when I graduated from the Kennedy School, just across the river, my first job was at Mediate.com as general manager. But this whole idea of how is technology going to change the dispute resolution field, it really started to captivate me. So I wrote one of the first books on ODR, Online Dispute Resolution for Business, and the field has grown like crazy since then. But it really came out of e-commerce. It was all of the, how are we going to resolve all of these cross-border, high-volume, low-value disputes where the jurisdiction is confused? But now it's becoming, obviously, with the AI revolution, much more of a focus for people around the world. How can we leverage technology to expand access to justice? And when the field was first created, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have iPhones, and all of these technologies have accelerated ODR. And that's why I think the synergy with AAA, it's so perfect, because we're seeing a seismic change in the way that people are going to resolve their disputes. And for us to be able to bring in this rich community, Mediate.com, 25 years, plus all the innovations we've had around technology, building the software platforms, I think this is just a really powerful combination that's a lot more than what the two individual organizations were.
And can you talk a little about what your role was at eBay and PayPal and how
Sure.
that ultimately led to spinning out another company? Because, when I think about online dispute resolution, I sort of think about, okay, typical like an arbitration, but we're doing it by Zoom.
Right.
But that's not what was going on at eBay and PayPal.
No, long before Zoom, we had a lot of disputes that we needed to resolve. Actually, again, it goes back to Ethan Katch and the Center for Information Technology and Dispute Resolution at UMass Amherst. They did a pilot with a small auction startup to resolve disputes between buyers and sellers. And then that auction startup was bought by eBay. So they put a link on the eBay homepage that said, hey, if you have a dispute, click here. And wow, they were just overwhelmed by tens of thousands of people. So that pilot actually turned into the online dispute resolution program at eBay. And then that was when they called me, because I had written the book Online Dispute Resolution for Business. And they said, we need you. So by the time I left eBay in 2011, we were resolving 60 million disputes per year. And we only had 25,000 employees. So we had to figure out how to use software to facilitate most of those conversations. And we got to the point where 50% of those disputes were resolved by mutual agreement, meaning the buyer and seller were in a structured negotiation, structured
60%.
by software. 50%.
50%.
But 90% were resolved without an eBay employee having to touch the case. So it was just software resolving the vast majority of these cases. And the reason why we spun the technology out was because we realized that this resolution center we built at eBay and PayPal was useful in a wide variety of different industries. Everything from insurance to property tax appeals to product liability to any collaborative economy, any sharing economy company. So at eBay, it's buyer and seller disputes. That's what it is at Amazon and Alibaba. But if you look at Lyft and Uber, they have rider-passenger disputes. If you look at Airbnb, they have host and guest disputes. So any marketplace is going to have a lot of disputes. And these companies are global. So you don't know what jurisdiction applies. So you have to build a fast and fair means of resolving these disputes in order to build trust so that people will continue to transact.
And do companies like Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, and I'm sure that's not, I want to paint with one broad brush, do they have effective dispute resolution systems today? Like, how would you grade them, like the best and sort of maybe the least best?
Oh man, put me on the spot here. I will say that in Silicon Valley, it's funny, I'm a dispute resolution guy. I'm hardcore mediation. My younger son's name is Alexander David Rule, for the initials. Thank you. Yeah. So, and he's 24. So I'm hardcore. I've got the tattoo. Actually, I love that you said "just do it." I was like, we should trademark that. Oh, somebody else actually.
What I actually said was sometimes I just do shit. That's
right.
That's what I said yesterday.
That's an even better
I was
one,
like,
but I don't know if we
sometimes I
can
just
put
do
that
shit.
on the, yeah.
That was in the letter to the board about the acquisition.
That was in the letter to the board. But in the Valley, I mean, now that I've been in Silicon Valley for 20 plus years, I think the virus has started to eat my brain like everybody else out there. Every time I see an industry where there's inefficiency and there's red tape, that's what Silicon Valley lasers in on. And it's like, okay, how do we do the Clayton Christensen disruption? How do we take something that's complicated and expensive and make it simple and cheaper and easier for everyone to access? So I'm known as the dispute resolution guy. So a lot of the VCs call me. So I met with Airbnb early on when they were dealing with their disputes and consulted with them. So they now have a resolution center at Airbnb. I met with Uber and talked with them about how they can resolve their disputes. Buyer-seller disputes on eBay are a little bit simpler than an Airbnb situation where somebody gets out of the taxi and says, "Ooh, I don't feel safe here." That's a tough thing to resolve. But if you put the goggles on, the dispute resolution goggles on, there are disputes everywhere, every industry, every place with a call center, airlines, coffee shops. There are disputes everywhere, and only a tiny percentage of those ever make it to a court or to AAA. And we need to radically lower the bar. We need to be resolving millions more disputes. And the only way to do that is if we can leverage the efficiencies of technology. And that's what ODR is all about, is how do we use information and communications technology to provide fast and fair resolutions? Because every person that has a dispute deserves a fast and fair resolution. And if they don't pursue redress because it's too costly or it's too complex, that's our failure. So that's what I know AAA. I look at AAA's mission and I look at our mission and it's like this. And we can work together and we can achieve this. We can realize this vision of radically lowering the bar to access to redress.
We're going to change the way humanity resolves disputes, Zach.
That's it.
That's all.
That's the
That's all we're
BHAG,
doing.
the big, hairy, audacious goal.
But to your point, and we were talking about this the other day, that so many disputes, and I think this is something, if we went around the room, I'm sure most people, let's even maybe just a show of hands, who has a dispute here that you never actually decided to resolve, either because hiring lawyers was too expensive or confronting someone was too uncomfortable? Just show of hands. Okay, so we have like 30% of the room in here are liars and 70% have disputes. So it is quite literally a pain point, meaning when you don't resolve that dispute, it sits with you in your neck and your shoulders and your back. And it's just like, it's something that you kind of constantly come back to because you think like, I wish there was a way to have dealt with that. And that's sort of the effect when we talk about like changing the way humanity resolves disputes. We mean that it is actually a very human pain point. You mentioned before that you've dealt with the AAA
Absolutely.
For 20 years. So how does the AAA of the last year and a half look different to you than the AAA that maybe you had come to know?
Well, I don't want to besmirch the prior AAA. As I say, AAA is the gold standard. They are what we all look to in terms of ethical, transparent, high-quality dispute resolution services. But I come back to the Clayton Christensen example. I think a lot of people just can't afford to use the services the way that they have been designed in the past because there's a lot of human case managers and human neutrals, and there's just it's an expensive process to deliver the level of quality that AAA has traditionally delivered.
At the scale at which they do it.
At the scale, I mean, an unimaginable scale when you think about it. But, I think AAA is specified in more than 1 billion contracts per year. A lot of these cases come in. Nobody calls up AAA and says, hey, can I put you in my cell phone contract? No, I mean, if you go to the Office Depot and buy 101 business contracts off the shelf, they've already got the AAA clauses in there, So it's amazing to think the degree to which AAA is a pillar, a civic institution in our country. That's why it's been around for 100 years and will be around for another 100 years. But what I see Bridget doing is she has this orientation, a future-oriented orientation. And she said to me several times, this is not your grandfather's AAA. We're building a AAA for the next 100 years. And the reality is, this is one of the reasons why everyone's here. We are on the cusp of a revolution in legal services. We are seeing the rise of algorithmic justice. And we have to figure this out. If you want to know what this is going to mean for the law, look at other industries that have been disrupted by technology. Look at finance, look at medicine. That's coming for the law, and it's going to come for AAA. And Bridget is a visionary leader to see where it's going and say, we need to get ahead of this. We need to be leading this curve. We need to be innovating. We can't wait in the back because we're the incumbent and then just sort of accept these changes passively once they've permeated the industry. So that's what's exciting to me, is to see that vision articulated so clearly.
And you've met a lot of my team now, Zach, so you know that, that there's a pretty talented, innovative team at the AAA.
Yep.
That just were like ready to be turned on and set loose, right? I mean, we have a structured innovation practice. We have 4 full-time innovation staff.
Right.
Every single person who works for the AAA, 700 of them, had 3 hours of innovation training. Every single one of them uploads ideas for change on a shared platform. We comment, we vote, we then send them to Go Teams and design sprints, and we have a pretty sophisticated innovation culture to support this transformation.
That preceded you.
It preceded me. I mean, yeah. we definitely have upped the game, but it was there. It was there when I arrived.
Yeah, and it is when speaking to your team. I think the thing that I've seen is everyone felt very confident that with the innovative culture of the AAA, what they all said looks to them that's changed is we didn't used to talk about it out loud. And I think that's one of the things that I've also seen. And if anyone has seen, like, the clips of the podcast as an example, and really sort of talking in a very transparent way about what's going on internally at the AAA, it does feel like you're being much more aggressive with messaging. How does that fit into the mission of what the AAA is supposed to do about not just being innovative, but like actually like talking and leading?
Yeah, I actually think that that telling our story, but then also listening to our users and our customers about their stories is the only way we actually successfully make this transformation. So we're happy to talk about it along the way, right? The story's not over yet, but we're happy to talk about the process and what it looks like and how we've approached it. And there's no playbook right now for what legacy legal organizations are supposed to do. So by talking about it to audiences, and I've talked to law firms and in-house departments and lots of legal audiences about what we're up to, I think we can together manage what I think is finally going to be the moment where technology comes for legal. Legal's been like really good for 200 years at resisting every technology innovation ever. But I think it's a wrap on that, right? So it's time that we figure it out and adapt.
I think the other change that I've seen, and again, sort of in studying the AAA, is that the original founding mission of the AAA was on the heels of the Industrial Revolution, and Colin, you know the history better than I do, but the mission felt very much like we need an alternative for well-funded disputants and high dispute dollar amounts outside the courts, because there's just too much business today and we can't wait on the courts. We've got to have a different alternative. Today, when the two of you talk about the mission of the AAA, it feels that you're emphasizing not the strain on the courts in terms of its ability to deliver dispute resolution to well-funded parties, but to be able to deliver dispute resolution to everyone. As you said, changing how humanity resolves disputes. Bridget,
we already know that ADR processes are better for the people who have the privilege of using them. And we want to keep making sure that we're delivering those services better and better to the people who already want them and are using them. But that makes us think everybody should have an option. Everybody should have that option. We want to democratize access to ADR, because for most people, it's going to be a better choice.
What are the stakes of not having dispute resolution for everyone, Colin, and how do you see that?
Well, yeah, you asked a really provocative, great question, Zach, and I'm going to resist going deep on this. But dispute resolution has been around since time immemorial. I mean, I've got photos of Sumerian tablets where people are arguing about copper ingots. I mean, it's like people sometimes talk to me as if the civil code was brought down off the mountain by Moses. It's like, oh well, this can never change. It's like, well, that's the judicial approach that we currently have towards resolving disputes. That is only one dispute resolution system from my perspective. And we negotiate way more disputes every single day than we ever litigate or arbitrate. So I think what I love that Bridget's doing is, the domain name for AAA is ADR.org. And as I say, AAA is the #1 ADR organization in the world. But ADR is defined by what it's not. It's alternative dispute resolution. If you and I have a dispute and we agree to play a game of checkers and whoever wins gets the money, guess what? That's alternative dispute resolution. Now, I don't know if you're going to take a training on that, maybe learn how to play checkers better, but the thing is, we can paint from an infinite palette in terms of designing dispute resolution processes. And the thing I like about ODR is it's not tied to any one technology. I guarantee there's somebody at Google right now that's inventing a baseball cap that will read your brain waves and let you communicate telepathically with somebody else wearing the baseball cap. Well, you know what? When that comes out, we're going to use that for dispute resolution because the technology is going to continue to change. So if we can paint in an innovative way in terms of all of these dispute resolution techniques, and we can leverage all of these technologies, resolving disputes in a fast and fair way has been a social priority since time immemorial. Every society all around the world has had mechanisms for doing that. And I think AAA is the entity in American society that is entrusted with that responsibility. And I think we need to be creative. We can't think inside the box. We can't just pave the cow paths. We need to build our business where the highway is going, not where the highway is. And that's what AAA is doing now.
So from alternative dispute resolution to maybe affordable, accessible,
we talk about
AI-based
appropriate
dispute resolution, or appropriate.
Yeah, that's the new A. It's not an alternative. Actually, we joke in ODR, there's no A. ODR is not an alternative. It's the only option.
So yeah, please.
No,
Bridget.
I was just going to say, I love that our audience and everybody here got to hear from Colin today, and now you understand why this is an exciting venture for us, and why I'm excited about it. Ben Barton, who's on faculty at UT
University of Tennessee,
and Judge Bibas, who wrote this book, Rebooting Justice. It's a great book on how we really have to address the access to justice crisis. Ben and Colin, I think, went to college together. Is that how you know Ben?
Ben was a couple years older than me.
I love Ben Barton, but he describes Colin as the most dangerous kind of entrepreneur, a true believer, and that's what we need right now.
I think he also describes me as a little naive, but I'll take the dangerous entrepreneur. Yeah.
So in two genuine believers, from my perspective. I know we're at the end of our allotted time, and I know I'm going to drive conference organizers here crazy, but we do have a room here. Maybe we'll take one or two questions from the audience. That's a first on the AAAi podcast. In the meantime, if you're not asking a question, take out that phone, scan that QR code. Every one of our podcasts is even more entertaining than this one, so you're not going to want to miss out on them. But do we have any...
I'll try not to take that personally.
We have a quick question right here in the front.
Sure. How long before we see LLM provisions for contracts be resolution in the same way that we have vetting provisions in those contracts? So trying to de-risk interpretation issues as answered before parties enter into the contract.
Well, I'll say we're doing a lot of work right now erecting ethical guardrails around the use of AI in the dispute resolution process. I don't think, people talk about, I have arbitrators and mediators and even lawyers tell me, when's AI going to replace me? And I'm like, nah, you got some time. But we are going to have to, at least 3 or 4 months, But I think
there's going to be more work for lawyers. They just have to adapt to what that work is. But anyway, go back.
I completely agree. And if you want to know where I think a lot of this is going, I think you can look to finance, right? There used to be all these people on the floors of the stock exchanges waving pieces of paper saying, who wants to buy 10,000 shares of IBM? All those jobs are gone. The only sound on the floor of the stock exchanges is the whir of the computer fans as the servers trade in milliseconds. But there are more people working in finance than ever before. And what are they doing? They're telling those computers what they need to do and monitoring and programming. So I think there's a future to the law that's a massive expansion in terms of what we do, in terms of delivering justice. As I say, you talked before about people just give up on disputes. In the dispute resolution literature, we call that lumping it, where you just say, it's too much of a pain, I'm not going to pursue it. Though that is the untapped market that we need to pursue. And your question of when are we going to have provisions in contracts that call out the limitations as to how LLMs and AIs can be used, we're already doing that in our agreements to mediate. We're already calling out that in ethical standards. We've created an organization called the International Council for Online Dispute Resolution that's issuing ethical guidelines for how you can use technology in dispute resolution processes. Because I think you can see the danger that somebody could create an LLM where they put their thumb on the scale, and then we've got a kangaroo court, and then the users don't even realize that there's bias in the platform. So this is going to take a lot of work. This is not going to be something that comes out overnight. The only way that AI is going to get traction in dispute resolution is if we can build systems that are auditable, transparent, that can show their work, that can provide reasoned awards, and that we can demonstrate definitively that the outcomes are as good, if not better, than what we are able to get through. And that's going to take a decade or more for us to get it right. In ODR, the last thing I'll say, I'm sorry, I know we're pressing on time. Ethan Katch, the father of ODR, created this idea of the fourth party. So party 1 and party 2 are the disputants, party 3 is the human neutral, and technology is the fourth party. We need to create ethical guidelines for the fourth party, because the fourth party is getting smarter all the time. And it's not just Gemini and Claude and ChatGPT, it's all the open source models from all over the world. We're going to see 1,000 flowers, 10,000 different models bloom. How can we track and ensure that the usage of those technologies and what we do lives up to our ethical standards? Well, the only way to do that is for us to be transparent about it and deliberate about it and use all of the lessons that we've gleaned over the past 50 years of dispute resolution practice and apply that in the ways these technologies are deployed. And there's going to be dust, there's going to be chaos in the near term, but over time, the arc is going to bend towards justice. And that's what we're committed to doing in this partnership.
Colin, congratulations. Bridget, congratulations on the deal. And great to have this discussion with you, really in getting your immediate reaction, not just to the deal, but to what lies ahead. And I think everyone here should be following what the AAA is doing, because I think it's going to be a good indicator for where the legal profession in general is moving. So thanks to the both of you.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the AAAi podcast. Please consider leaving us a rating and review on your favorite podcasting platform. And don't forget to follow and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.